In this video, we're going to take a look at the creation of datum points in Creo Parametric. There are several different ways to create datum points in Creo Parametric, and the datum points can then be used to create other datum features such as datum axes and datum planes. The first method we will look at is placing a datum point on a vertex. Here on the Model tab in the Datum panel, I will select Point. Then I will hover over a vertex and click. As you can see, that adds a datum point. Inside the datum point dialog box, I can continue clicking other points to add additional datum points. Then I can click OK. As you can see, the 3 datum points were added, but if I look at my model tree, I can see that they're all part of the same item. So if I want to edit those, I'll have to right click on the datum point description here and then go to Edit Definition. And again, I can see all 3 of these are within the same datum point feature. Instead, if I want them to be separate, I will just make sure that I create one at a time. So I'll select my point, click to place it, then click OK. Now I can see that point has its own entry over here in the model tree. Personally, I prefer this, but obviously you can do it either way and have multiple points grouped into one item if you like. The next method we'll take a look at is adding a point to an edge. I'll select the point tool, then I will click on an edge. As you can see, it places the point somewhere on this edge and it has a value. This value is essentially a percentage along this line. If I click and drag, I can go to 0.5 to make it halfway across, or 0.75 for 3/4, etc. I can also come over to the dialog box and adjust the value here as well. Then click OK. This can be done on a curve as well as a straight line. So once again, I'll select the point tool and click on the edge of a curve. And then once more, I can adjust its location. If I want it to be right at the midpoint of that curve, I'll go ahead and put in 0.5 and click OK. You can also place a datum point at the center of a curve. Once again, I will select the point tool and I will select the edge of the curve once again, but this time in the dialog box where it tells me my reference edge and it says on, I'm going to click the drop down and change this to center. Now it will add a datum point at the center of that curve. Next, we'll take a look at the placement of a point at the intersection of 3 surfaces. Let's say, for example, I wanted a point where this front surface and these 2 angled surfaces met. So it would be a point up here in space somewhere. I'll go ahead and select my point tool, select my first surface, then hold Control and select the additional 2 surfaces. So I'll select that one there. Then I will rotate my screen, hold Control and click the 3rd surface. And as you can see, it located the point up there in space where those 3 would intersect if they were to continue. The 3 surface method works whether we're dealing with a planar surface or a curved surface. So let's say I wanted to find the intersection of this curved surface, this planar surface, as well as the angled surface underneath here. Once again, I'll start my point tool. I'll click my curved surface. I'll hold Control and click the planar surface here. Then I will hold Control and click the planar surface here. And there you can see where that would project and intersect. A point has now been placed. Another method for placing a point is placing it on a surface and providing offset values. This works very similar to placing a hole. Let's say that I wanted to place a point in the middle of this surface here. I happen to know that this length is 5 inches and this length is 10. So I'm going to create some offset values to put that right in the middle. I'll select my point tool, then click somewhere on the surface. Then in the datum point dialog box, I will click in the offset references collector. I'll select my first reference offset, then hold Control and select my second. Now I can adjust the values. So once again, I'll go 5 inches in that direction and 2.5 in this direction. And I now have a datum point right in the middle of that surface. Next, we'll take a look at projecting a point to a surface. So let's say this point I just placed, I wanted the same point on the opposite surface. I could lay that out again, or I could project this one onto that surface. I'll select the datum point tool once again. I'll select the point I want to project. Then in the drop-down list here in the datum point dialog box, I'll choose the project option. Then I will hold Control and click on the surface I wish to project it to. Then I will click OK. And now you can see I have that same point projected on the opposite side of the part. Now, like most everything else in Creo, these points are parametric. So if something changes, the points will update. For example, let's say that I change the offsets for this point here. We should see the other point that's projected from it update. I'll find point 7 here and then select Edit Definition. And I'll adjust my offset values. Let's say I want them to come in 1 inch from each direction instead of centered on that surface. There you can see my updated point, and you can see that the projected point updates as well. That concludes this look at creating datum points in Creo Parametric.